And we're back. Welcome back to Donald Kent Art. We are so happy to feature the fourth episode of Equal Training. This episode is on debunking white privilege. This series is based on the book Equal Training by White Student T. How are you doing today, White Student T?
Excellent, Donald. I'm thrilled to be back.
Excellent. And could you give us the full title of the book? I do have the Amazon link in the bio, I guess, of this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Full title is Equal Training: An Analysis of Anti-White Material and Language Manipulation Tactics Used in American Schools.
That's a mouthful, so that's why I let you do that job. And right there.
Thanks.
And we want to thank all the people that have been attending the show, watching the show, sharing the show, and commenting. Clearly, this is it's getting well received, and people are recognizing that we need the tools to go against CRT and DEI out in the world, and in such a way that gives us leverage and puts us on a good footing. So giving us equal training. If you think the left has their rules for radicals training, well, what's our training? What do we have to go into this culture war? So is there anything you want to preface this with before we get started, T?
No, I think that was a great intro. And like I said, this is what my work is built to do, to disseminate among the general population and plant the seeds, establish a good starting point for everyone to begin to organize on and to build on.
Brilliant. Okay. So looking at the first graphic here, before we get into the white privilege argument, I would like to point out that it's the criteria that's put on a privilege checklist, which will determine who that privilege checklist is going to be pointed at. A privilege checklist can be created and pointed at anyone or at any group simply by changing the criteria that's put on the list. Thus, whenever I encounter these pre-planned public discussions on privilege, I see them as nothing more than a public shaming exercise or a public humiliation ritual. These are very similar to the public shaming sessions that have been used in past communist movements. So that's an introduction from the book that I just read there. Perhaps you could describe what this graphic means.
Yeah. So if you take a look at the graphics, these are dials that you can turn and
Mhm.
change, right? So on the left side, you could choose the category of sex, then class, then tribe, then color, and then race. We currently are selecting the color. And then if you look to the right, those are the four main color categories that all of humanity can pretty much fall into, right?
Mhm.
So we've selected color and white to build or to speak about a white privilege checklist.
Mhm. So give us an example of like how this functions. For example, I mean, I have some sense of, when uh, I've seen dozens of things online about, oh, check your white privilege. And,
Yeah.
it's used in tandem with words like whiteness and like all these other kinds of, Marxist terms. And so how does that work? Give us some kind of an example.
Well, okay. So first, let me address that. Normally, when these types of remarks are directed at your average white citizen, right, unsuspectingly, the first response is to immediately counter argue and defend themselves that they are not in possession of these things,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
They don't possess privilege or anything like that. Maybe they grew up poor, whatever.
Mhm.
And that's actually incorrect because we are in possession of a sense of belonging in our own societies and institutions.
Mhm.
But the correct name for that is your inherent rights. It's not called a privilege.
Right, right.
Right. So this is not really an argument about wealth. This is not an argument about how much you have or having it easy or whatever.
Mhm.
This is an argument about the sense of belonging that you have inside of your own society that populations from all around the world
Yeah,
don't possess.
yeah. So I mean, I don't know how savvy the audience is on this particular topic, but it's the thought of going to another country and, I mentioned this on a show earlier today. If I were to go to Japan and complain that all the signs were in Japanese and say, you're oppressing me with your Japanese privilege, you know,
Yeah.
it shows the context of how absurd this is. I'm also an advocate of making people not fall into that dialectical spider web of these words, to not try to even defend yourself against it, because they've already got it all worked out. If you are, that means they're leading the dance. Essentially, you're doing a different jig. You're not going to dance to their beat. So, but I'll let you continue a little bit with the
Yeah.
concept.
So, as I stated previously, this is a public humiliation ritual.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Okay.
And you can arrange or bring about public humiliation rituals, even using other topics like cultural appropriation, let's say.
Mm,
Those are always modeled to be one sided and always directed at the host population
okay.
and never directed back at all the other groups who are making
Yeah.
the accusations, right? So, if we go down to the next illustration, it should be of a young girl.
Sure.
Um, and this activity, these privilege walks or privilege checklists or whatever, really, it's an activity that trains other groups to circle around white students or citizens and execute a public shaming session, right?
Mm,
So
mm,
this conditions white students or citizens to be submissive to those other populations who are reading this scripting and directing it at them.
mm, mm.
Another concerning other criteria is that it trains other groups to change the name of white rights to
Yeah.
a privilege and then challenge them.
Mhm.
Which, if you go to, let's say, if you did go to Japan
Yeah.
and you're like, no, I belong here just as much as you do, and that sense of
Mhm.
belonging you feel, that's just your Japanese privilege, right? Who
Yeah.
am I? I'm a nobody. I have nothing to do with the establishment of the Japanese society or its
Mhm.
institutions. So, no,
Mhm.
I don't have the sense of ownership that real Japanese have. But if I were to walk up to someone and just say that to them, that's an incitement tactic. That's the
Mhm.
type of a challenge that no one even expects to immigrant or a stranger, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. Um, it's a tricky thing to be in, because not only is it a twisted sort of argument, but it's usually screamed in your face. It's done in an environment where typically you're outnumbered in some sense, and the average white person is just completely sideswiped by it. They're not
Right.
thinking like, what are you talking about? And by now, though, after so much time of this sort of bleeding its way into academics, etc., I would say that most people just want to avoid conflict. They don't want to engage in this type of argument, but sometimes they have to. You know what I mean? And one thing that I just try to push a lot is the concept that our people founded this country. All of the technology and the medicine and the economy and the law and even the very language coming out of your mouth is from our people. And so, I and I, this is first off to set the context, but I mean, secondly, I have this kind of crazy notion that non-whites living in our countries should be grateful. I know that's just so like horrible that I should expect
Well,
them to be grateful, right?
I think that depends on whether or not we were raised with like common manners, because I was
Mm,
raised that way too.
yeah,
Like if I go to someone else's society,
yeah,
I need to be on guest behavior and not cause trouble, right?
hmm, hmm,
Because I'm the one visiting them, you
right,
know.
right, right.
Um, Now there is another layer of deception built into this. Previously, we touched on chapter 2, which discusses the racial category of white, right,
Mm,
which is much broader. And
yeah,
basically, anyone who's not in the racial category of black or Asian is
hmm,
put in the racial category of white, right? So we have everything from the Middle East, North Africa, Hispanic, Latino,
hmm,
and then us, the original peoples of Europe, right?
hmm,
Well, this one additional layer of manipulation is that white passing minorities are encouraged to shift blame for their crimes over to white identity.
Mm.
to in a way of challenging this white privilege that they are taught about, right? So we've
Mhm.
even seen people on Twitter in the last couple of months scream out "white privilege alert" from certain court cases or whatever, and those happen to be white passing, but they are minority groups,
I
right?
understand.
So when they do something bad, they call themselves white, and then when they want special treatment again, they use the other group identity that they're protective of, right?
Yeah.
So we've got more than one layer of deception packed into this argument, the
Mm.
white privilege argument. And if you want to go to the next few illustrations,
Sure. Sure.
uh, this isn't even staying contained on campus, right? Like we've seen this come out into mainstream media. I'm pretty sure there's even been billboards with this kind of stuff on it,
Oh yeah.
um, and it's really used for destabilization, and I don't know if demoralization is the right word. I mean, it has that effect, but it
Yeah.
feels more like this is being broadcast from public platforms down on the
Mm.
population of our countries to make us give up our sense of ownership that
Mm.
we have to our collection of rights and freedoms, to the societies and the institutions that we founded,
Mm.
and just allow this unlimited global influx of, unrelated populations who are just going to, say that they're just as entitled to everything that our population has as
Mhm.
we are.
Right, right, right. But we know a certain group of people that is very, very good at pretending to be white, and there's lots and lots of memes out there. Not exactly memes, but there'll be clippings where they say, "Oh, us white people have to learn, to like blah blah blah," or "Us white people are bad," and then right next to it is
Right.
another clip saying, "Oh, well, I'm not white, and I'm this,
I'm a
other."
minority or I'm
Yeah,
white passing. I
yeah,
call them part time whites, just so you know. That's in the book. It's
interesting.
like cool out, part timer.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go to the next illustration, I think that'll go back to what you mentioned earlier about Japan.
Mm.
Um, you can make a privilege checklist. You can pick any of the four colors, right? And then just go pick a country where that's the color of the host population there. So if
Mm.
you want to go to the next illustration, and I'll let you read that one. This should be
Is this
Nigeria.
Oh, the dissident mama?
No, no,
Is
no,
this
down, down.
Oh, down further. I'm sorry. Okay,
There you
so
go.
welcome to Nigeria. Why are you moving to Nigeria? To challenge black privilege. That's the same theme with Japan here.
That's the
Yeah,
same ambush. That guy's never heard of that,
yeah.
right? He's like,
There's
"You're not even African. Look at those kids."
there's another great meme that I have to find in my huge meme stash. It's a kind of a 1950s illustration of a white family going on a road trip, and underneath it it says something to the effect of like, "Hey kids, hop in, we're going to Mexico where we can, get all these benefits and claim to be oppressed," and on and on and on, all the usual jargon and garbage that we hear
Oh
from
yeah.
people trying to become parasites in our country. And it, also Jared Taylor makes an interesting point where he says like the reason why non-whites come to white countries is because they couldn't build civilizations or societies like ours, and they're here for that benefit,
Right.
and so like it's so plainly obvious and so plainly explicit. But our job really is to train other whites to understand these things in order to talk about these things, defend themselves, and have a sense of wholeness, knowing that we are the heritage Americans, and that's that. And there's no
Yeah.
question that there's nothing evil, wrong, or shameful about it. There's
No.
so much to be proud of. In fact,
It's reinforcing our identity in
yeah.
times where we're repeatedly targeted by
Mhm.
subversives who want to make revisions to it or revise it out of existence. It's
Mhm.
natural to reinforce your identity. And even in the non-white countries who are now experiencing the first wave of what ours has already gone through,
Mhm.
it's like seeping out to the rest of the world. Same
Mhm.
thing. And we're reasonable people and we say, yeah, so, reinforce your identity. You are the Japanese. I'm not Japanese just because I hopped on a plane and flew over here. You know,
Yeah, right, right.
so
Also,
if you what you
just
can do. Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry, just one more little add to that. This is an argument that I saw in the UK where a white journalist was asking migrants from different countries, what is your nationality? And they'd say British. And then she would say, "What makes you British?" And they'd say, "My passport." you know, and
Yeah.
I'm like, And then whenever I argue with liberal whites about this topic, I jam that down their throats that I am not a passport. A piece of paper does not define who I am. You can't just get a passport and you're American. It's a it's I don't think I have to explain. Everybody gets it. So
Well, the identities that our population originated were
mm,
to be identifiers of our heritage and that
mm.
collection of things that makes our population unique and defines us,
Well,
right?
the-
So what we're seeing is globalists who want to end all sovereign nation states are telling the rest of the world, "Hey, go identity shopping.
mhm.
Those anyone can be Swedish or American or whatever.
Yeah,
You just got to have citizenship or a passport or whatever." So
yeah,
there's a lot of confusion that
right.
creates, and then on our side, they went ahead and classified the resistance of that as racism or whatever.
Mhm.
It's very premeditated, right?
It's
Like you
good.
can see the steps they took before releasing this, but um, the
The
success. Mhm.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm so excited about it. The other big lie is that, quote, America was founded on immigrants, unquote, that like America is a nation of immigrants. No, we're settlers. We're
We're a
not.
nation of white ethnics.
Yes, that's exactly what we are.
The people who founded America are the ones who are not called diverse.
And on and on. There's so
Yeah,
many points to this, but I apologize
exactly.
for cutting you off.
No, it's okay.
Uh,
Now this is revisionist rhetoric, right?
mhm,
And the
mhm,
success of this going through depends on can they get this normalized and can they get enough people to go along with it, right?
mhm,
So where do we want to start to challenge it and cause it to malfunction? It's at the student level. If you scroll down
yeah,
to the next photo, should be students in the classroom. This is about providing students with simple questions that will cause the teacher's scripting to malfunction on site,
excellent.
but asking the right question without any derogatory language or anything so they can't get in trouble. They can't be retaliated against, right?
This is
So,
brilliant. Yeah.
do you want to read that one for me?
Yeah, yeah. The blonde boy is asking, "Can you explain the difference between white rights and white privilege?" And the teacher's, and then the boy next to him is saying, "Told you he changed the name." So, this is of course a re-education classroom to discuss white privilege. So,
Yeah, and this is about asking the right question, right?
mm,
So it takes some thought, some brain power, and saying, okay, how am I going to frame this? Like you have to fully understand what they're doing, and
mhm,
then you'll find the best way to frame it when you form your questions and send them off. Now, the
mhm,
book itself has a lot more to this particular subject and a lot more questions and stuff packed in, but this is just an example, a simple example of what even little kids can do. They could just ask that question and it'll stump the teacher and the exercise stops. So,
it's as being a former teacher myself. Obviously, I don't teach, critical race theory or Marxism or anything, but I know the feeling of like when you get a curveball question and you're like, this is out of my range. And as a teacher, teachers have a type of personality and a type of a situation where they have to have authority and look like they know what they're talking about. So to throw a curveball at one of these kind of liberal teachers like this would be great.
yeah,
Um, I think, and it's a very innocent question. It's a very like
well,
what
it
it
is.
does, that honestly points out how white rights are deconstructed through this through the linguistics here. So
Well, you can also build public support for challenging privilege that you
mhm,
could not build by challenging someone's rights.
mm,
So simply changing the name and operating on keeping people confused and seeing how much you can go or how far you can take them. I
yeah,
think that's pretty much what we're dealing with here.
yeah,
Now, originally, we looked at the two dials, right? Those are fluid. We can change those around. So
mhm,
if you want to go down to the next illustration, let's
okay,
change it to legal class, and we'll change it to minority. Right now, in chapter 2 of this book, when we discuss race in the white racial category, there's a
mhm,
lot of different subgroups that are packed in there. Some are classified as minority, and some are not classified as minority.
mhm,
Right
mhm,
now, those minority groups, through It has to be thousands of laws and policies from the state level all the way up to the federal level. They get
Mm,
all sorts of special protections and special treatment that non-minority groups don't get, right?
mhm,
While staying within this one same racial category, we can consider all of the material that media or academia directs at us, white ethnics, that
mhm,
they don't direct at minority groups. Think of all of the things they do and say about us that they don't do and say about these minorities. And let's
mm.
construct a privilege checklist out of that.
Fascinating.
This is an example. The next one down, this is the privilege criteria that was listed in this chapter. It's a
Mhm.
starting point for readers. And I have to give mean credit to Biospirit of the West, which is one of my fellow Twitter warriors and also a member of the white positive community that I'm a member of too.
Excellent.
If you want to scroll down, you should see a list of criteria, and I'll
Right.
let you read that off to the listeners, Donald.
All
I'll let
right.
you have the
Yes.
honors.
All right. Thank you. It truly is an honor. Minority privilege means one, schools won't teach about the crimes committed by my ancestors or tell me that I must atone for them. Interesting. Number two, the role my population played in the trapping, selling, and owning of slaves will be cropped out of all school lessons plans and not discussed in media, news articles, or movies about slavery. Number three, I'm given a free pass to say and do things that the host population cannot. Number four, I can depend on receiving a higher level of sympathy from large media outlets. Number five, I am the beneficiary of affirmative action and diversity quota policies that steal opportunities and resources from the host population and redistribute them to me and my group. Number six, I can access and benefit from a society and institutions that my population is not the founder of. Number seven, policies are in place to ensure the interests of my group pardon me, one more time. Policies are in place to ensure the interests of my group will be overrepresented in media, social institutions, and politics. Number eight, no colleges or universities require students to complete coursework on or acknowledge the existence of minority privilege in order to receive a passing grade and graduate. That is a lot of stuff there. And what's brilliant and beautiful about it is how it's the inverse image of everything that whites experience. You know,
Yeah,
we yeah, it literally you turned it all inside out, and that's just quite extraordinary how that all works. I think taking something like this and posting it in your school newspaper or uh, making it public, that in a sense could be like, this is why we're talking about white rights. What are white rights? What are our rights as students, in schools, universities, and even in the workplace?
yeah. Well, we've seen white privilege checklists posted at schools. I've seen them
Yeah.
in the break room for various employers. We saw that like a year or two back, right? There was a news cycle on it. And I'm thinking, hey, if this is all happening at institutions who claim that they do not engage in differential treatment, they want equal treatment, then
Hmm.
anywhere a white privilege checklist has been posted already, a minority privilege checklist should be posted right next to it and
Hmm.
equalize the climate in that
That's
space.
freaking brilliant. I love it. Yeah. And is this in your book as well, this page?
Yes, this is. Like I said, there's a lot more to these chapters than you and I cover
Yeah.
on our talks, but it walks you through the full thought process. It's going to show you how you can apply this to the general population, and really, a lot of the people who have been secretive and using these tactics
Mhm.
for social engineering without telling anyone, they're about to lose control because everyone's going to see how it works.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so yeah, all this is in there. This is a starting point for readers and students. You can obviously build on this. Like I said,
Mhm.
think of all the things they point at us that they don't point at minority groups,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
make a checklist out of that. All the
I
things they
feel
say and do, and all of it. you know?
I just feel like this would be a great thing to post in any kind of public space, libraries or anywhere that you could get
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah,
this is all within the one same racial category of white,
yeah.
so it can't be racist. It's all in the same racial
And
category.
every single thing here is a fact. And here's the thing that I've noticed is that normie whites are not even aware of like half of this stuff. They just go about their business. They hear this shit, pardon my language, they hear of this stuff on the news and they're like, rah, 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 rah. And, but, there's a whole, you know, portion of the population that's tuning the news out that is sort of like just grumbling or whatever and not really understanding the depth of this, that this is baked into our law now. This is baked into
Yeah.
people ask like, how come you don't see white people in commercials anymore? It's
Displacement,
there you
quota
are.
displacement.
Right, and there's no, I don't know how to put it, but like, I don't know, let's say a Hispanic felt that they were being discriminated against. Well, then they've got some kind of grounds on which that they can say, "Oh, I'm this class of person, and I'm filing for
They're classified as minority. That's what it
reparations."
hinges on. And
And
then, yeah,
there's even race hustlers out there that there's this black guy on like TikTok who he says, "Oh, I go from job to job where I'll do something that I'm not supposed to do, and then I'll get fired for it, and then I will sue the company for racism." And
yeah,
this dude's freaking rich, and he does it
yeah,
over and over and over.
yeah. He
So,
doesn't even have to bear the burden of proof or whatever. The way that case law gets worked, one
exactly.
just builds off another. It's a it's an extortion racket.
Yeah, precisely.
Um,
It's a hustle.
but one thing I want people to consider
Mhm.
about this topic and something that's bigger, um, training our next generation that everything is supposed to be called a privilege instead
Mhm.
of being called a right
Mm.
sets them up to have zero rights.
Mm.
No group wins in the end, only a tyrannical government that wanted to take away everyone's rights and put them under control. And one way to do that is by brainwashing them to think of everything as a privilege instead. Okay. So this no group wins in this. You might feel like you're winning now if you've participated in this, but it
Mhm.
doesn't stop there. It keeps going. It compounds. Year after year, more groups jump in, the angles change. And before you
Mhm.
know it, everything is a privilege and nothing is a right, and America's gone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So those of us who think ahead, those of us who can see ahead, this is not only for the white population. It is immediate while they do the breakdown of America and us, the Americans, right? But it won't stop after that. It's going to keep going. So if you thought you won that battle, once you turn around, you
Mhm.
have no rights.
Yeah.
Yours are gone too. Nobody wins. So
Yeah.
I would say you need to take that into consideration.
I always say that essentially the left is a hate movement. That the white positive scene is a human rights movement, and this is exactly. And I'm not exaggerating. It's human rights. These are our rights that are being taken from.
These I refer to them as our inherent rights.
Beautiful.
This is the collection of rights and freedoms that our forefathers passed to our generation, and we're supposed to serve as the custodian of and
Hmm.
pass to the generation coming in behind us.
Hmm.
That's it. We're not supposed to take them away. We're not supposed to
Hmm.
vandalize them or anything,
Yeah.
right?
Right. 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 Yet every generation, there's new politicians that are trying to weasel their way around things or erode things away or create new amendments to something or other, and it really is very much about people before politics. And this opens up a whole can of worms about completely getting rid of the current structure and replacing it with a people-centered nationalism. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And I think any institution that's had this type of material already used on that campus or location,
Mhm.
automatically you are obligated to establish set aside specific training for white students who got this pointed at them and got
Mhm.
put through public humiliation sessions based on the race or color, even though you advertise policies not to treat people differentially on basis of race and color. It's already done. So
Mhm.
at those locations, the contamination's already happened. So this is where equal training comes in. If this is for us, if it
Yeah.
was only pointed at us in the beginning, then undoing that, we're going to have a dedicated space that is only for us to undo that and defend
Mhm.
ourselves. So
So that when you say dedicated space, it makes me think of self-imposed segregation. I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but to self-segregate.
independence. It's
Yeah,
not segregation. And independence.
yeah, independence is
Segregation is the word, the alternative wording they came up with to say, hey, how can I
there you
take
go.
away
See,
independence? Oh, we'll call it
see,
segregation.
why did I use that word instead of independence?
I don't know, but ask them, hey, can you explain the difference between white independence and segregation? No, their brain will pop. Ask them the right question.
Dude, that is a good one. Talk about a liberal meltdown right there. Holy crow. So, so I'm telling you, people, this book is the one that we need to be studying. So, um, eh, T and I talk, before the show and on other occasions, and there's a lot of content in there that not only needs a lot of contemplation, but a lot of discussion. And so, if you can get the book and then share it with your group, your network, especially with people who are in education and then also people in the workplace, and come up with some kind of strategy in which you can start becoming independent and standing up for your rights.
Yeah.
um yeah,
And a workplace is a good example.
yeah,
Let's say if you work at like a merchandise store or like a finance company or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
and this is part of that annual training or the DEI, whatever it is now,
yeah,
you could simply send a response directly and say, hey, it feels like you're referring to white people's rights as a privilege. If I'm wrong, go ahead and explain the difference between white rights and white privilege. I'll wait.
yeah,
But on that note, I don't think you're supposed to be using a company platform
yes,
to distribute this kind of material, especially
right,
if it's not related to what we do as a company. You know,
right,
you could present it that way, put it on them, ask them the question.
yeah,
Um, don't word it in a way that gives them anything to retaliate with or attack you on. Ask
hmm.
a direct question. And if it's an employer, they have a legal department who's probably going to break into a sweat that they even did this. So,
Yeah, I think that essentially what we need is like a phrase book. Maybe that could be your next book or something. Is like just all phrases. Like here's the situation, here are the questions, and here are the potential responses to the answers
I
that like a chess game.
I will be happy to work with anyone in our community who wants some assistance on my part, whether it be political movements, whether it be linguistics, like we're talking about here, or if we have anyone who's picked up the torch and started emailing the schools and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm definitely happy to do that. We do have 2 episodes left, and then our finale, Donald. The episode right before the finale is going to be terms. So we will touch on that, and we're going to give everyone else some pointers.
Excellent.
Our next episode is actually going to be on denial of identity,
Mm,
and I'm going to show our listeners and readers how entire populations are switched in and out of countries, and the identities are reassigned. I'm going to
good.
show you how that works. I'm going to show you how you can gridlock that and cause it to malfunction, and that at that level, we're now smacking the invisible hand.
Nice, nice.
So I'm going to
Loving it.
leave it here, buddy, and I'll let you
Yeah,
wrap
this
up.
right, right. This is a great place to wrap it up. I'm glad you mentioned what's coming down the line. For the finale, we will have Brent Danger from School of the West on. He's a major hero in our sphere. Schoolofthewest.world is his site. It's for homeschooling for white people. And it's just got some beautiful content. He's a fabulous guy and a great friend. So the energy in the finale is going to be really fun. I want to maybe quickly ask if there's any questions from anyone in the chat. We've had some
Oh yeah,
really, really great.
we haven't taken any questions this whole time
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Well, I'll say this: we've had lots of fantastic commentary. Eke Lux live streams is another great mind in our sphere that
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember I got to listen to Eke a few times in the past on some of his
yeah.
streams too. I like
I
his
want
content.
to do a little promo over there, so, send him some sunshine. I'm really happy to have him appearing on these shows. So he's mentioning here, denial of identity is of great importance to my thinking currently. Yeah, it's it's something we have to focus on. In the martial arts, we focus on the weaknesses of our opponents, and if they're creating this illusion or they're denying our existence, something of this nature, then we're going to have to attack that. That's definitely a
Yeah.
major
Well,
artery,
especially with all the conflicts going on the other side of the planet right now. I
Mhm.
remember, I think it was Ben or somebody take to a public stage and scream at that population that they don't really exist. And at that point, I was like, "Oh my god, he's doing it on purpose!" Because I know how this works. I'm like, he's
Mhm.
doing it on purpose. So I was like, this has to get out. So
Mhm.
we're going to cover that in the denial of identity chapter, and it's of great importance. And Donald, uh, one thing that I know a lot of people struggled with is that when they question these things, they've been conditioned to be fearful of retaliation,
Yeah.
or having an alphabet agency sicked on them to destroy their life, right? Because currently, all that's out there is very emotional. Maybe they're using strong language or symbolism or whatever that gives ammo to whoever wants to attack them, right? Well,
Mhm.
this is all formatted to kind of bypass that and say we're going to have an open study of the tactics.
Mhm.
After you learn this concept, you can look at any newspaper article, any piece of academic material set
Right.
in front of you, and you can audit them, and you'll know what to call them and how to frame your argument and neutralize it. So,
So there's two opponents here. The one are the insane sociopaths with the pink and purple hair that have like meltdowns and make it look as if, oh, you're hurting me and I'm in pain, and create the drama. And then there's the kind of the people in the system that think, oh well, it's my job to go after that guy who's standing up for his white rights because I don't want to lose my job, and
or
I'm just doing
there's
my
the
job.
there's the
That
guy that's 5 years from retirement or
yeah,
10 years of retirement,
yeah.
and they're hanging that over his head, saying you better not, or else you're
So
gonna you're gonna wind up homeless.
right. So there's two things here. We're dealing with these crazy Antifa types and BLM types, but we're also dealing with the system that coddles them and makes them the vanguard of the death of the West. So
The
there's
narrative controllers.
yeah, it's a lot to handle. It's a lot to handle. Anyway, God bless you for all the work that you do. It's extraordinary, and I want to thank everyone who came and comments in the chat, and then everyone watching this show. It's critical that you send it out, share, 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 and please do get White Student Tea's book. It's really a game changer. So on that, I will wish you all a wonderful good night, and definitely tune in next week, Tuesday, 8:30 Eastern. God bless.
See you next week, guys.